Hi, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame. When I'm out in the street shooting, I'm often trying to find something that makes my heart skip a beat. It's often a little something that just sparks my imagination and that I pursue in order to make an image. So many times when we're out making photographs, we're kind of doing it absently. We think that there's something there, and we raise the camera to the eye and we take the picture thinking or hoping that something will turn out as a result. And more often than not, it doesn't happen. But the moments where I see something and I get this sort of visceral reaction inside of myself are moments where I just know that there's a potential for something really interesting. And there are a couple of things that I kind of look for, and I chose 3 images that kind of illustrate the idea of what I'm hunting for when I'm out on the street. All right, here we have a shot by JK. We have no XF information on here. Now, this is one of those moments where I would get really excited about the potential of making a photograph. We see this woman with a striped top that's inside of a subway or a train car. And what excites me about this is that her top mirrors the striping of the car itself. And that mirroring is something to be excited about. And JK here does a great job in creating a really interesting photograph of this scene. And moments like this, you really can't anticipate. You can be walking and walking for hours, and all of a sudden you see a moment like this, and then your pulse starts to increase, because you just know that you have something here, and that if you can hold the camera steady enough, and if you don't screw it up, you have a really good and interesting shot ahead of you. And these are the kind of moments that you really have to be open to. You often can't be on the hunt for them because you really don't know what to look for. But if you're in a state of mind where you're not preoccupied with the kind of shots that you want to get, you can be in a place in sort of a Zen sort of state where all of a sudden things like this reveal themselves. And if you've prepared your camera and you've taken care of all of that stuff beforehand, all you have to do is raise the camera to your eye, carefully compose the shot, and make it. And one of the things about moments like this is that, you could look at the woman and the way the light is illuminating her ponytail, her shirt, the interior of the car, and go, oh, that's a wonderful shot. But one of the things about being in this place is that you are conscious of what's happening with the entire frame, because the way he composes this shot with the exterior of the train and the mirroring of the stripe in the car to her top is really key to making this shot work. If he had gone in tighter and excluded the train itself and was just sort of framing her inside of the window, it still might be an interesting shot because you have some really good lighting actually falling on her and inside of the car. But it's the fact that the overall composition is a mirror of those stripes that makes the shot really exceptional for me. And being in this zone, being in this place, is about not just being solely focused on your subject, but being conscious of everything that's in the frame. And it's a hard place to get into if you're anxious or if you're frustrated with your photography. You really want to get to a point where you're sort of just present and you're just observing. Things like this happen all the time, but many photographers just miss it just because their head's not in the right place. So it's really important that when you get out there to just relax, make sure your camera is set properly, that you don't have to be preoccupied with the camera itself, so that when moments like this present themselves, you're ready to capture them, because they're often very, very fleeting. Next, we have a shot here by Suresh Naganathan. This is shot with a Fuji X100S at 1/2500th of a second at f11, ISO 2500. Now, this is a really great shot for a variety of reasons, but one of the things I kind of want to focus on is the light, because that's often one of the things I'm looking for. Not so much subject matter, but I'm often looking for light and shadow. And if you want to sort of get into the place where you are sensitive to those special moments, that little something that we often talk about on these videos, a great place to start is just by being aware of what's happening with light and shadow and building from there. I mean, this image is great with respect to color, but at the heart of this image is this light that's coming from the right that's illuminating this boy as he's moving through the frame and is creating the shadows of who I assume is another boy behind him, And that shadow is being cast over here, and then the boy's shadow here is being cast here. And that light and shadow makes the shot, because if this was sort of evenly illuminated, say it was an overcast day, or we just had some even sunlight illuminating this entire scene, it still will probably be an okay shot. I mean, we see plenty of images of kids at play over and over again. But this shot is made all the more interesting because of the play of light and shadow. And if you're struggling when you're out in the street to make a photograph and you're feeling like, God, I'm taking pictures, but there's nothing special about them, I'm struggling to see or find anything of worth, what I tell my students is put all of that aside and just start looking at light and shadow. Just pay attention to that. Now, this shot is great because of the light and the shadow and the color, but also that gesture of that moment of the boy running, and his legs and his hand placements are nothing short of perfect here. But that moment would never probably have revealed itself if Suresh here had not been aware of everything else that we've already talked about in terms of the overall scene. Because the placement of this boy here, he was probably running around all over the place, but just the fact that he gets him in the right spot, I think would have required Suresh to be aware of that play of light and shadow in the first place. Because otherwise, he could just follow the kid and make shot after shot and after shot, and they wouldn't probably stand out as well as this does. At least that's what I would be thinking. I mean, he could have just been lucky, but in my experience, the ability to be able to make shots consistently like this really require you to be hyper aware of everything, of light, of shadow, of color, of gesture. And if you can get to the point where you start recognizing those elements before you've actually made the shot, well, then you're putting yourself in a situation where you're able to do this consciously and consistently, rather than just sort of leaving it to chance and hoping that you get a good shot. Here we have a shot by Vijayaraj, shot with a Nikon 3200, ISO 1600, f2.8 at ISO 100. Now, this is a real interesting image because it breaks a bunch of rules. We have a subject here that's about to walk off the frame, which is usually a big no-no. His hand is cut off at the wrist, another big no-no. And despite that, the image works for me. I like the shot. I think that surprisingly, despite those quote-unquote mistakes, the image has a really nice balance to it. I think it's the camel's head here on the far left, as well as this sort of hill or mountaintop in the background, help to create a really nice and balanced composition. What draws me to this image is this orange-yellow turban that is on this guy's head, which points to another thing that I'm often hunting for when I'm on the street, which is just color. I just talked about light and shadow, but color is also a big draw for me. And I think it's really important to try and look at the world in sort of an abstract way, where you're not literally looking at photographing, in this case, a camel or a man or a car or whatever it is. When you're able to take a step back and take a look at the world in terms of light, shape, color, tonality, you start thinking photographically. And that's when you have the potential of taking even the most ordinary scenes in the world and making something extraordinary in the camera. Now, this turban on this guy's head is really sort of the anchor of this shot, and the color contrast between that and the sky really makes it stand out. I mean, you really sort of go straight to his face and his head, and he's got a great face and even more incredible mustache that he's wearing. And despite the fact that he's about to move out of the frame, and even his gaze is off the frame, which typically would ruin a shot, the image is balanced really nicely by the presence of this other camel here, this hill over here. But I think one of the reasons I like this shot is I could imagine that this was maybe at a photo safari of some sort, and that there were a bunch of other photographers. And I can guarantee you that if there were a bunch of other photographers, what they ended up doing is taking a lot of pictures of camels, right? So they were just taking these pictures of these camels moving in this camel fair, and most of the shots that were probably produced weren't particularly interesting, right? They may have documented what it was like to be there, but beyond that, there wasn't a real standout photograph. By including this figure here with this very color-saturated turban, you're making a shot that has a distinctive point of view. You're creating a relationship between the camels and this guy here in the foreground. And you're creating something that tells a story, but it's also very interesting graphically and with respect to color. And when you're taking a look, when you have a scene like this, it's as busy as I imagine this scene to be. It's really easy to sort of fall back to just going, click the shutter and make a snapshot. But if you're paying attention to color and you're paying attention to light and you're paying attention to all these things that we talk about week after week after week, you take that step back and you start looking at the world as basically all these little things that you have the potential of putting together and making it into something special. Individually, these elements are really sort of nothing. They're just fodder there. But with a camera and with a person who's really paying attention to the world in a really interesting way, you can take color, tonality, shape, pattern, all of those things and bring them together and have it result in a photograph that allows you to share how you perceive the world at any given moment. Because you want people to look at your photographs, particularly if they're, people who are experiencing the same moment as you, and have them look at those photographs and go, wow, I was right there and I never would have imagined the way that you saw it. You reveal the world to me in a way that I never could imagine seeing it, and you reveal it to me. I mean, that's the greatest compliment that any photographer can provide anyone, is a fresh perspective on the world. But the way you can get to that, especially with street photography, is by practicing and elevating your way of seeing beyond just creating a snapshot and paying attention to light, shadow, and also just those unexpected moments, those unexpected juxtapositions that can reveal themselves, like with the first shot. That's where you want to get to with your street photography. Because if you're not doing that and you're just going out there and photographing people as they're walking down the street, I can pretty much assure you that your images 5 years from now are going to be the same as they are today, because you're not challenging yourself to see differently. And once you get on that path, your images just become not just better, but they become elevated, because you're seeing the world with a sensitive eye. And that's really what any photographer should strive for. All right, hope that was helpful. If you want to contribute to the growing community of photographers we have here at the Candid Frame, you can just go to the Candid Frame on Flickr, ask to be added, and I'll get to it. I usually try to get up on the page here about twice a week, so I may be delayed in getting you approved to be in the community. One of the reasons I do that is because I don't want a bunch of junk mail or a bunch of crap polluting what we have here, which is why I just don't leave it open for anybody to sign in. But if you ask to be added, I'll be more than glad to do it, and you can contribute up to 5 images a day to the community that we all can check out, and then I'll sometimes pull from the images here. And if you want to follow my own work, I'm pretty active on Instagram, and you can just follow me at Instagram at Ibarionex and check out what I've been doing. And if you've not heard of the Candid Frame is actually a podcast which features conversations with some of the world's best established and emerging photographers. I had this wonderful conversation with a photographer from Bed-Stuy, New York, Russell Frederick, who's been documenting that community for 12 years. Great story, great photographs. You don't want to miss it. You can check it out by going to thecandidframe.com or listening to it on our YouTube channel here or on the Candid Frame blog. Or you could also download the Candid Frame app, and there you have access to the entire archive of interviews, over 350 interviews that we've produced over the past 10 years. So check it out. All right. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.